Thank you all for joining. We're going to get started in a few minutes. Thank you again for joining the City of Manteca's Facebook Live on proposed sewer and water rate changes. The presentation will start at 2 o'clock. We appreciate your patience.
All right. Well, good afternoon to the City of Manteca community. Thanks to everyone joining us here on this wonderful and beautiful sunny day. And we're here today to talk about our proposed sewer and water rate changes, which some of you have likely already heard about. So I actually have a couple of my friends here to join me today. So I myself am Shane Ryan. I'm the city's director of finance. I also have a deputy director of engineering, Samporn Bunsalat, and then also deputy director of public works, George Montross. And we're here to talk to you today about primarily water and sewer rate charges and changes. So wanted to clear the air a little bit and talk about some of the city's various core and key funding sources and the differences between those. Starting, of course, with primarily what we're here to talk about, right, is our sewer operations rates and water operations rates. So these are monthly rates, right, that you pay on your monthly utility bill. And they help with operations and maintenance of sewer collection, flow, and treatment to the wastewater treatment plant, billing and collections as well. That's the same for water on the billing and collections and system maintenance and maintenance for water pumping. So that is distinct from what we call a capacity fee. So water capacity fee is a fee that's imposed on new development. And we also have a sewer capacity fee that's also imposed on new development. These fees are imposed on new development upon connection. So essentially for development to be able to connect to our system for water and our system for sewer, specifically to the wastewater quality control facility, we charge a one-time connection fee and we call it a capacity fee. And that is completely distinct and separate from your monthly utility bill. Additional fees that are imposed on new development. So again, these are fees that are imposed that align with typically an issuance of a building permit to actually build a housing unit itself. And we have a couple of them that are associated with water and sewer. One is the Public Facilities Implementation Plan, aka PFIP, one for water and one for sewer. These help to pay for wells, pipelines, and testing for new residential, commercial, and industrial construction. For the sewer side, similarly, again, for industrial, commercial, or new residential construction, help paying for trunks, laterals, pump stations, canals, and lift stations when needed. So those are fees, again, that are on new development. And then there's also all of our other development impact fees. So the city does have other types of impact fee programs that are not related to water or sewer. And just to clarify that none of the other development impact fees we have can be used on water and sewer infrastructure. So I wanted to clarify that. There's also something that people refer to called a Mello-Roos tax, and there's also other supplemental or additional property taxes that some folks might see on their property tax bill. Some folks might see something called a landscape maintenance district. That's an additional property tax levy to be used for parks, landscape, lighting maintenance, but not actual water and sewer infrastructure itself. Another thing people might see on their property tax bill is something called a community facilities district or a CFD, aka Mello-Roos. And those can help for maintaining of streets, sidewalks, lighting, landscape, and park improvement as well. But again, not actually helping to pay for any water and sewer infrastructure needs or capital itself. And then finally, our wonderful newly passed in the last election is Measure Q, which is a sales tax. The Measure Q has some priority funding areas that were discussed during last year, including in some of Facebook Lives that we've had in the past. Public safety, definitely, namely being one of them, roads and infrastructure as well, parks, public facilities, and essentially quality of life programs. But water and sewer infrastructure, or the maintenance or the improvement of, was one of the major priorities for Measure Q. And then finally, old school general fund, right, which is primarily funded from sales tax, traditional sales tax, property tax, and transient occupancy tax, and some other major funding sources. We do call them discretionary, but discretionary with limitations. So in our budget and fiscal policy, which you'll find contained within our fiscal year 2025 annual budget, we just have some reminders from there that enterprise funds, essentially which water and sewer rates are part of enterprise funds, are restricted funds that manage their revenues and expenses. They're supposed to be self-sustaining, essentially. They operate like a business within the city, which means they generate their own revenues, their own fees, have their own rates, and rely on themselves to be able to fund their operations. And so general funds versus restricted funds. As a general practice for city government, especially for Manteca, restricted funding sources are evaluated and utilized as much as we can, right, to the extent possible before having to rely on the general fund or Measure Q. The general fund and Measure Q is really to be only spent on goods and services when no other restricted funding source is available or eligible. And a lot of some folks have asked recently, what was the timeline? Why did we wait so long? Why now? Well, this is a great occasion because we have our 2043 general plan update, which was adopted in July of 2023. About a year ago, we also updated our sewer master plan, which was in March of 2024, and alongside our water master plan in March of 2024. We also have just recently released our new capacity fees for sewer and water. So again, just a really good prominent time right now to be looking at our rates. And so we just have our sewer and water user rate study itself, which has recently been completed. So we again we hope to engage with you all as the public through our Prop 218 protest process. And speaking of the general plan, so again, like I mentioned a little earlier, adopted in July of 2023, there was an amendment made in February of 2024. The general plan is important when we're trying to evaluate the needs of water and sewer into the future, right? And evaluating the rates that we need to charge, and then also the development, the fees on development we need to charge as well, to understand how much exactly do we need to update infrastructure, and what is going to be the cost of maintenance, and how much is going to be the need or the demand on the city's water and sewer system going into the future. And the growth rate expectation, the general plan, is 2.8% on an annual basis. So we do expect the city to grow pretty significantly over time. So I'm going to go ahead and take a pause for any questions that anyone might have on my portion of the presentation.
The public is welcome to enter their questions in the comments field in the Facebook live chat. We'll give it a few moments. Okay, one question that came in was, why can't we put this to a vote? Can you all clarify the process of approving proposed water and sewer rate increases, or will we get to this during the later portion of the presentation?
That is an excellent question. Thank you for whoever asked that. And actually, we have an answer to that question that's coming up later on in the presentation itself. So we just really appreciate your patience. If you just want to hang on for a little while, we are going to be answering that within the presentation itself.
Thank you for that. And another question to keep in mind as we move along that we received was, why can't sewer rates be based on square footage and number of bathrooms? And I believe that's something we're going to touch on a little bit more down the line. Thank you for the questions. We can go ahead and continue.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Samporn here, our Deputy Director of Engineering, to keep going.
Thank you, Shay. I do have several slides. We're going to start with the sewer master plan first, and then we'll take a pause in between each section just for any Q&A. So the sewer master plan is a 20-year study document that's typically adjusted and revised every 5 years. The last time the city made our sewer master plan update was back in 2006. That's really critical to remember that because it takes several years of data to actually put together the master plan. So when you have a master plan that was completed in 2006, that means your data is at least 3 years old already. So even though it's technically 2006, it's probably using data from 2001 to 2003. The collection system was more recently updated in 2013. We contracted with Stantec in 2021 to evaluate our current master plan and just had it completed in 2024. So it does take several years to put these documents together if it hasn't been updated in a while. Just some bullet notes here. The Manteca sewer system serves more than 91,000 residents. We operate roughly more than 250 miles of sewer mains. The current permitted plant capacity is 9.87 MGD. That's million gallons per day. And we also deliver recycled water for irrigation and construction dust control. So this is a picture right out of the master plan. If you're interested, you can go to manteca.gov under the engineering page. Under wastewater systems, you can feel free to download and take a look at the master plan. But this is a very good picture to show. The central shed, which is the pink area in the center there, that is the oldest part of town. And then we have the north shed and south shed. So when we get some of these questions of, hey, I'm living in a brand new house that's just recently built, why should I pay for some of these improvements for the older pipes that need to be replaced? Keep in mind that the build out of the community starts at the center, and then we build out from that nucleation site. All new homes rely on some of these older pipes. So as we have new homes that connect and come online, the capacity fees that they pay are used to help upgrade the existing systems. So the thought that I'm in a new home and I don't need to pay for upgrades of the old pipelines, that just does not sit well. And it does not make any sense because at the end of the day, there is a star there. That is the wastewater treatment plant, and we only have one that is shared amongst everyone. So irregardless of where you are in the city, you're still subjected to the fees and the projects that need to go, that need to be made at the plant. Here is a map of our current system. So we have to collect existing data. We also do flow monitoring data. We collected field data from over 18 different sites. We put together a model to predict where the problems are going to be. So this is actually our existing system. And as you can see, towards the center of the old part of town, there is a pipeline that has no residual capacity. So if the city was to stop growing, stop building new homes, we would still need to replace eventually that line that has no additional capacity. If we stop growing, stop building new homes, we wouldn't be collecting those capacity fees that would help to pay for the upgrade of the existing system. The future, these are all the future expansions. If you look at all these costs, there are lots of projects. There's lots of increased flows. Again, why build more homes? Because these homes that are connecting to our system are actually helping to pay for the improvements needed to maintain our existing systems. So if you're a long-time resident and you're in these areas that are older, that have pipelines that are going to be falling apart, you want new homes to come online because they are actually going to be helping to replace those, repair and replace those older pipelines. That ultimately helps to keep the cost down for all users because you're sharing some of the costs between existing users and also future users. A little bit of history on the wastewater treatment plant. Wastewater treatment plant started operation in 1959, excuse me. It was last major upgrade was made in 2006. The average dry weather flow, that is the permitted capacity for the plant, is 9.87. The current NPDES permit, which is what you're required to have to discharge to the river, that expires this coming March. So we are in negotiations with the regional board to try to maintain our current permitted capacity and hopefully expand it. Some of the questions we've been asked is why aren't we planning for the future? So here's a map, another exhibit out of the wastewater master plan that shows how we are planning for the future. So as you can see, we have some interim improvement projects that's supposed to take us up to 8.23 MGD. If we're assuming the same growth projections as the general plan, we're looking at that 8.23 being able to take us out to 2030. Having said that, if you do go and look at the more recent data in terms of population growth and increase, we're slightly above that 2.8%. So we are struggling right now. We are running right up against our permitted limit. So we do need to advance these interim improvement projects as soon as possible. Once the interim improvement projects are done, we do need to work on the phasing of the next expansion project. We're planning on expanding in 2 phases. So the phase 1 expansion should take us out to 2048, and then phase 2 is going to take us beyond that. Just I'm not going to go through all these numbers, but just looking at the colors, I wanted to give everyone an idea of what improvements are needed. So the interim improvements, which are supposed to take us to 8.23 MGD, that's all the orange that's kind of scattered out. Those are the improvements that are attributed to existing users, and also some of the upgrades are needed to provide services to new customers. The recently updated capacity fees, those are going to be charged just to developers, so just growth-related fees. They are going to be paying for all the blues and the future greens. So developers and new development and new customers and new growth are going to be paying their own fair share. And the reason why for that is because there really is no additional excess capacity to take on new customers at this time. Funding needs. We've heard feedback about, hey, why are the fees increasing so much all at once? Why can't these improvements be spread out over time? As you can see, these are all the funding needs, and we are trying our best to spread all the costs over time. So over the next 20 years, these are the funding expenditures that we're looking at. With that, I'll take a pause and see if there's any questions before I move on to the actual sewer rate study.
At this time, no further questions other than the ones brought up about sewer rates being based on number of square footage and restrooms, which I think you're going to get to in the upcoming slides, as well as the 218 process.
We'll get a few more minutes and then before moving on, or?
You can continue, and we'll pause if another question comes in.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and dive right into the actual sewer rate study itself. So this is not to try to make anyone feel better, but it is a fact. The sewer rates haven't changed for coming up on 2 decades. These curves show what the Manteca sewer rates are currently at since 2009, and what the U.S. Consumer Price Index has been. So just based on Consumer Price Index alone, costs have increased 46%. Of course, Manteca being the city being an organization, When you look at just the CPI, that is not a good indication of what the actual cost increase are that the city sees. There is a more detailed breakdown, which is specifically related to just water and sewer. And so when you're looking at costs associated with water and sewer systems alone, that has increased over 95% in the last, since 2009. So this is just a reminder of why these increases are needed at this time. The current financial conditions are here. This is the facts of the matter is that the revenue that we're bringing in every year, and this is based on 2024 data, we're bringing in about $16 million per year. The basic operating expenses are $14.1 million. So that means there's only about $2 million left for any improvements. And if you recall back on the slides on all the improvements needed at the plant, those are some really, really big numbers. I think we're looking at about $20 million per year. And so you'd have to save for 10 years to be able to deliver 1 year's worth of project. That's just not feasible. What do your sewer rates pay for? So you have the collection system that collects the sewer from your home, conveys it to the treatment plant, and then it also pays for the actual treatment of the sewer, disinfection, and final discharge into the river. You also get a staff of dedicated, you get staff that's on call, dedicated, licensed, and certified. They're on call to operate and maintain all the series of pipes, pumps, and any treatment process that could go wrong. We're also using that money to pay for all the improvements needed to maintain your current level of service. And also keep in mind to comply with stringent regulations. If you remember back when I talked about the NPDES permit, those permit cycles expire every 5 years. So every 5 years, we have to negotiate with the regional board for the right and privilege to discharge treated water to the river. The requirements are increased every 5 years. And because we haven't increased our costs to you, the ratepayers, we haven't increased our rates for the almost 20 years, that's 4 permit cycles. So the cost to the city has been increasing, but we haven't been able to increase the cost to the citizens. How do we determine the rates? We can't just pick a number and run with it. We can't just say, hey, CPI has been increasing for the last 20 years. We're going to go ahead and increase your cost based on CPI. We can't just say our costs are X. We're going to go ahead and increase the cost to the customers. We actually have to hire a third-party consulting. So the city contracted with Stantec Consulting Services to put together a rate study. It's called a cost of service study. They take all the data that's provided by the city to determine what the costs are. They come up with the actual rate study and the structure. And then they also take a look at it on the professional level to make sure it's fair and equitable and that the charges that we are charging are fair and equitable to everybody, not just one particular class of customers. So is new development causing my sewer bill to increase? The reality of that is no. New development is not the reason for the sewer increase. So new developers pay or charge when they connect to the system capacity fees. Capacity fees cover the cost of expanding infrastructure needed to serve the new homes and businesses. And if you recall, if there is a need to expand existing pipelines who are also falling apart to serve the future development, that is also paid by the capacity fee. So I would actually even argue that all these new developments are helping to keep the costs lower for all your existing customers, all of our existing customers. Why are sewer rate changes being considered? Again, just as a reminder, costs have increased over 90% for the city. The cost of maintaining the existing system has increased. As time goes forward, existing infrastructure are starting to fail. And to not fix the issues that we see before they fail, running it to failure is actually going to end up costing more to the residents. So if we don't have these increases and we run the system to failure, what we would have to do is we would have to borrow money to fix the emergency. We'd have to enter into an emergency contract with a contractor. So we're not going through this normal design, bid, build process, which means your costs are going to be significantly higher. Those costs, there's going to be cost to borrowing the funds. The actual construction itself is going to be more expensive because it's not planned. And so those costs would then be passed on to existing ratepayers. So we are trying to do the right thing by making sure that we're doing preventive maintenance. We're taking a look at all the systems, replacing them before they actually fail, and end up saving money overall. What's new? Some of the things we are making changes to. The existing system had 18 different unique classifications. To make it more simple, we are collapsing it down, collapsing those 18 unique classifications down to just 7. So we have a classification for single-family residential, multifamily residential, mobile homes, and then we have commercial low-strength, mid-strength, high-strength. And then there is also an industrial class user. Those are more strength-based, and we'll address those on a case-by-case basis. So this is where I'll take that time to answer the question about why we can't do it based on square footage. So on the wastewater side, it's very, very difficult to measure wastewater flow down at the lower levels. Could we do it based on square footage size? That is one way to run the calculations. But assuming you have a 10,000 square foot home, that doesn't necessarily mean you're actually going to generate more waste. So when we did it, we thought the fairest way was to take a look at all the flows that are coming into the plant. We divided the flow based on the number of population and came up with an average user. So for the average user, I think it generates roughly 66 gallons per day. So that's your average user per person. For a single family home, the typical average resident, if I recall correctly, is 3.19. So you take that 66, multiply that by the 3.19, we come with a number. And that's the number that we use for an average home. So it's the most fair way to do it. And if you have a single family home with a typical resident size, you generate a typical amount of waste, and that is translated into a flat rate per single family resident. Next slide is the proposed sewer rates. So starting currently, the current rate is 43.33. Starting in, assuming the 218 process passes, starting in May of this year, you would see an increase to 58.60. And then in July of 26, it'll go up to 64.50, July of 27, and July of 28. Most residential customers will see an increase of roughly $15 per month, beginning May of 25. If you're a mobile home resident, that's roughly an increase of 60 cents per month. Commercial customers, that will vary depending on what your user classifications are, but anywhere between 15 to 30. Industrial users will be handled on a case by case, but they are typically billed at a volumetric rate. So it kind of depends on the individual contracts. How do we compare with others? Um, if you attended the last community meeting, the data we have was old. That data was based on the end of 2024. We did go through and revise our records, the information that we have as of January 2025. And as you can see, we are towards the bottom currently, but even with the proposed increase, we're still a lot less than some of our neighboring agencies. Take a look at Stockton, we're very comparable. And then if you take a look at Lathrop, that's $83, so they're significantly higher, and Lodi is the leader of the pack. With that, I'll take a pause and see if there's any questions.
Okay, looks like we do have a couple questions from Facebook here. Shay, a couple that you can help us answer. They're asking about a discount program or assistance program for the utility rates.
Absolutely. Thank you, Director of Public Works, Carl Brown. Appreciate the question there. So yes, the city's current discount program for senior citizens, if you are 60 years or older and qualify under certain income thresholds, you can have a discount on your solid waste bill and your wastewater bill. However, we are updating that structure actually coming up at the next city council meeting, which is going to be on Tuesday, March 4th, where there will now be a discount for all three utilities moving forward, water, sewer, and solid waste. And we are also going to increase the income threshold based on the CARES program, which is used by PG&E for income level qualification for those seniors. The overall total discount per your utility bill on an annual basis will be significantly larger than what we are currently offering. So we're very proud to bring that forward.
Okay, one more question was about the water arrearage program and wastewater arrearage program for the COVID relief funds. How much money do we receive from that, and how is that utilized?
So for the arrearage program, which was through the State Water Board, was originated actually through the American Rescue Plan Act. I'm not sure if a lot of people know that, but that is the mechanism the state delivered the funds to us in two tranches. One was, I believe, during 2022, and then the other during 2024. The 2022 amount was nearly as much as 2024. We had almost $800,000 in 2024 that went to help out those that are in need, and a similar amount in the 2022 year as well, to help out folks that were struggling on their water and sewer bills. And so basically there was some standards of qualification that our utility billing staff had gone through a variety of customers to see who was eligible to receive any funding. And what the funding basically did was put adjustments or credits, if you will, on a variety of utility accounts that we deemed eligible under the program. And we ended up spending over 95%, if I recall correctly, of the funding that we received.
Thank you, Shay. For the panel here, what types of grants, funding, and other assistance have we gotten for water and wastewater?
So specifically for water and wastewater, we're always looking for grant funding, but pursuit of grant funding is difficult. As our finance director mentioned before or during his portion of the presentation, water and sewer rates are supposed to be, water and sewer funds are enterprise funds. And what that means is they do need to be self-sustaining. So there are very, very few opportunities to apply for grants. And to pursue the grants, we do need to also dedicate staff time. And as being a small agency pursuing a state and federal grant, we would be going up cities like Sacramento, like San Francisco, like LA. We do try to pursue grants where we can, but they are very, very few and far in between. But we are continuing to look at those.
This is George Montross, Deputy Director of Public Works. We also successfully received a couple settlements from a lawsuit for groundwater contamination, and those also helped us improve our water system and mitigate some of that contamination.
Yeah, two more questions here. George, you can help answer this one. How are we producing CNG at the wastewater treatment plant, and what are we doing with that CNG?
So a recent improvement we conducted at the wastewater treatment facility was taking some of the sludge generated through the process and converting that into compressed natural gas. And then the city of Manteca has been making some large investments in our fleet to go ahead and outfit them with CNG engines. So currently, a lot of our existing equipment operates off of the CNG, saving us a lot of money on diesel and gasoline.
Yeah. And that is actually one of the ways that we're able to keep the solid waste rates a little bit lower. Most of that fleet is running off of CNG, so it's cheaper to buy that CNG that's produced from the wastewater treatment plant and fill those trucks with it. And last question that we have here is, has the city evaluated reusable organics, taking them in from other jurisdictions so we can charge them and make a profit that we can put into our system to alleviate rates? We have looked at that. It is not something that we can move forward with at this time because the nature of the food waste is very volatile when you mix that into the wastewater stream, and we don't have capacity to do that at this point, but it is on the future CIP listing for solid waste.
Thank you for that, Public Works Director Carl Brown. There are no further questions at this time. We can proceed.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to the water master plan now. There's a lot of information on here, but I really just want everyone to focus on the chart that's here. So as you can see, the last time we updated our rates was back in 2008. It was also around that same time where we introduced, or the city had the ability to purchase surface water through SSJID, which was really a necessity. The groundwater basin that we're sitting under, and the so sorry, let me take a step back. So City of Manteca actually does not have any water rights. I know we sit here and we see the delta right next door. We see the San Joaquin River, but we actually do not have any water rights. We do not have the right to extract water from the river and use it. The only water rights we have to is the groundwater basin that the city sits on top of. That is the Eastern San Joaquin Subbasin, which has been classified by the state of California as critically overdrafted. What that means is people are taking more water out than necessary. And so as you can see from the chart, the safe yield is 1 acre-feet per acre per year. And the city, as well as many others, has been overdrawing from the groundwater basin. So to correct that, we partnered up with other agencies to purchase surface water from SSJID, and you can see those there where we're actually starting to improve starting in 2005 and going forward. Now, with that, there are added costs because we are purchasing that surface water. Now, because we haven't been increasing our fees to the users, that is a cost that the city has been trying to balance without going back to the users to increase rates. As part of the master plan, we conducted a hydraulic model of the system. Lots of lines here, but what I want to mention to everyone is the system that the city operates on the water side is operates under one zone. So there's only one pressure zone. And that's really important to know because since we're all under one zone, the network is very important. So no matter where you are in the city, you are reliant upon all the pipelines and the wells and the surface water connection points to provide clean, reliable water service to your property. So I've heard folks say, I'm in a new subdivision, I have a new well, I have a new pipeline. Why should I pay for improvements to the existing system? Again, it goes back to reliability. If you had a problem at a nearby well site because the entire network works as a whole, you are being provided water service from another source. It might be surface water source, or it could be another well on the other side of town. Future needs. Again, this is just showing that the system pressure is really just one zone. Looking at all the future needs, this is a model of the future build-out conditions. So you might be in a new development on the east side of town, but again, you are relying on the network of pipes and wells to be able to provide you with clean drinking water. Based on what we're forecasting, by 2030, we'll need to add 3 additional wells, and then by 2045, we'll need to add 3 additional wells. So total of 6 additional wells by 2045. And because we operate in the system as one zone, those wells can go in anywhere in the system as long as they're on the same network. So this is a good picture of, let me go back a little bit. So this is the pipe network, right? And again, very similar to the wastewater system, the community, the city, started out at a nucleation site. So downtown Sacramento, those were the first group of folks that got together, decided to form and become a city. And then everything else is built up upon those original pipelines. Some of those pipelines have been in the ground for 100 years. They are due for a replacement. And you could make the argument that I'm in a new subdivision, I don't need those pipelines. But again, it goes back to reliability. You still need and you still rely upon those old pipelines to provide you service so that you can transfer the water from one side of town to the other. So making the argument that I have a brand new pipeline, I shouldn't be paying for these replacements and upgrades of the older pipeline, that's just not true because you're still reliant on those pipelines to convey water to you from the source and to your house. Funding needs, and if you take a look at these are broken down into blocks. So the city is attempting to our best abilities to figure out what projects are needed right now. And when I say right now, I mean in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and 20 years. So we are trying to spread the cost over a 20-year period, but we still need to make sure we handle the more critical projects. And so these projects have been identified. Phase 1 CIPs are shown in red. Phase 2 are shown in orange, phase 3 in yellow, and then phase 4 way out in the future. So we are trying to spread the cost, and it's not like we're spending all the money in these next 5 years. We're only coming up on the rate studies to support the next 5-10 years of projects. And then as we approach the 5-year limit, we will do another study to determine what the rate increases are or changes, whatever they may be based on current needs at the time. With that, I'll go ahead and take a pause before we get into the water rate study. See if there's any questions.
Yes, can we address the current TCP well treatment system and how that's underway to improve water quality?
Yes, so that is an active project. We were able to secure some funding through litigation. George Montrez mentioned that earlier on in the presentation. So whenever, just whenever the state or federal government adds a new maximum contamination limit, we are allowed some time to, one, figure out what we need to do, two, figure out the funding source, three, figure out the technology needed to provide the actual removal of that constituents, and then three, time to design and construct the project. So TCP was introduced as a new legislation, was it 2017? Thereabout? In 2017. At that time, we had 5 known well sites that had TCP. We entered litigation to try to get money from the folks that caused the problem. We were successful in securing those funds. We made those improvements to those 5 sites that were known at the time. And as the improvements came to completion, roughly was it, I think, 21, 22, thereabouts, we found a new well 29 site that tested positive for TCP. With that positive testing, we had to go back and pursue litigation, get additional funding to do the actual treatment on well 29. I am happy to say that well 29 is, we just had the inspection by the state on Thursday. So we had the system installed, inspected by the state on Thursday. We're looking at getting the media to actually clean the TCP and remove that from the system sometime next month. And by the time April rolls around, we should be 100% free and clear of TCP from our water system. Having said that, the quarterly reports that you get on your monthly bills, those notifications will continue because it is an average data that's spread across I think several quarters. So you might continue seeing that for another 3 to 4 quarters. So just bear in mind that the water will be clean, but because of the way the calculation is done, we will still need to continue to send out those quarterly reports. And just as an engineer, I look at some of these new contaminants. It's really stringent. So the reporting limits or the testing limits for TCP is 5 nanograms per liter. That is such a small number that it's mind-boggling because there's 1 drop of TCP in the entire water distribution system. And because of that, we have to send a notice to each and every single individual in our system to warn them that the water is potentially dangerous. 1 drop. So, any other questions?
Yes, another question. Why has the city taken so long to increase rates? We're hearing that it's taken nearly 2 decades. Why now?
You know, there really isn't a good time to increase rates, right? There's going to be a slide next that shows the last time the water rates were increased. Water rates actually were reduced to help during the economic downturn. So when things go down, when development stops, you want to kind of give people a break, and so you cut cost. But when things are going up and getting more expensive, you also don't want to increase rates. And so it is a partnership, right? You need to have the public willingness and understanding. You also need to have staff that is willing to put in all the hard work to do all these studies, to ask all these questions, to run the analysis, to sit here in front of everybody and be berated why we're increasing the rates. And then you also need to have the political willpower for folks that are in power to want to actually do the right thing. So it is really a tough decision for us. We don't want to increase rates. We don't like doing it, but it is something that does need to be done.
Thank you for that. I think we can move forward to the next slides, and then we'll do another break for questions.
I'll go ahead and pass this over to George Montrose.
Thank you, Samporn. George Montrose, Deputy Director of Public Works. I'm here to go over the water rate study. So as we've been discussing, water rates haven't increased in nearly 2 decades. As this graph shows, construction costs are up 128%, and other utilities have increased their rates by 86%. Without rate increases, the city of Manteca is unable to keep up with inflation, power, staffing costs, and many other factors. Current financial situation. So the water rate revenue is approximately $13 million a year. Basic operating expenses are $19 million a year. So when you look at those two numbers, you can see that the water fund is currently operating in a deficit and is not sustainable. And that's the biggest reason why we have to go ahead and increase rates. So what does it take to deliver reliable water service? Critical infrastructure. The city of Manteca has over 300 miles of pipes, 17 wells, and a 4 million gallon water storage tank. Regular investment, maintenance of aging infrastructure to ensure reliability. A skilled staff. The city of Manteca is fortunate to have highly trained staff who operate and maintain the system 24/7. Essential projects. Replacement or expansion of infrastructure to keep pace with our community's needs. City of Manteca water rate adjustment timeline. So as we've mentioned, the last time water rates were increased was in 2009. Then Samporn addressed that water rates were actually reduced during the recession in 2010 and 2011. And as people have been mentioning, time has gone by. And then we've arrived here in 2025, and that's why we're here before you discussing water rate increases. And so there would be additional annual increases if passed following the initial increase. The price of reliable water service. Several factors are driving up the cost of water service. We've got labor costs, water purchase prices, material costs, and capital improvement projects. Investing in Manteca's water system. The proposed water rate adjustments would help fund about $30 million in projects over the next 5 years to improve system reliability, including purchasing and delivering water, maintaining and replacing critical infrastructure. The city of Manteca conducted a cost of service analysis to ensure proposed rates are fair, aligned with the cost of providing water, and considering regulatory and environmental changes. This slide illustrates the steps the city of Manteca has completed to calculate the proposed rate increase. We've got a financial analysis which was conducted. We looked at future project funding. Future capital improvements were considered. And all of this was reviewed and digested, and what came out of it was the proposed rate increase. So about the proposed water rates. If adopted, the new rates would become effective May of 2025. Each year after that, beginning in July 1 of 2026, the city would make annual adjustments. And as you can see on the left side of the slide, our current rate is approximately $33.63. May of 25, it would increase to $60.75, and then you would have annual increases in 26, 27, and 28. For a typical residential customer with a 3/4 inch meter who uses about 12,000 gallons of water each month, the monthly bill will increase by a little over $27 in the first year. Now, as you can see in orange, Manteca's rates at $33.63 are significantly lower than our neighbors. Some of this is due to the fact that it has been a while since we increased our rates. And now, even with the increase that's being proposed, the city of Manteca's water rates would be very competitive amongst our providers. You can see where the second Manteca proposed item comes in at $60.75, well below the average of all of our neighboring communities. So this concludes the presentation on our water rates. We'll pause again for additional questions.
Yes, we received another question. Does Manteca require utility services be secured exclusively by the property owner? Maybe this is a question for Shay.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there are several cities in California, actually quite a few, and even some in the Central Valley that do secure your bills or the payment of your utility bills via a potential lien on the parcel owner. However, although there are sections of the City of Manteca's municipal code that allude to this practice, the city at this particular time does not enforce such a provision in the municipal code and does not do annual property liens against properties for utility bill purposes at this time.
Thank you for that. A second question that came in was, if we were to face another economic recession, how would this impact rates?
Yeah, I can help with that. Then others can even chime in if they want to. So yeah, that's recession is definitely looming, and there's a lot out there in the media that folks are reading that due to changes all the way into the new administration in DC to potential inflation increases, the Fed's a stance on not reducing interest rates very significantly this year has some concerns about potential recessions. So, we do have a policy that does offer payment plans for those that are not able to pay their utility bills due to financial hardship. There's also a couple of programs that are offered by the state and the county, like HEAP, for example, that you can also try to approach if you're having financial hardships in paying your utility bills. During COVID, for those that remember, there was some additional programs that were offered that utilities across really the country were offering for those that face financial hardships during that time as well. So can't speak to what the state government and the federal government would do in the situation, but those are some programs that locally we would be able to help you with.
Another question, how will the tiered rate system for water change with these proposed rates? Or will it at all?
Oh, thank you. So the tiered rate system is being done away with. There was some recent, I don't remember the exact reference, but I think it was Otay Water District, where the tiered system was kind of called into question and really threw up a lot of problems with the district that implemented the tier system. So we took the approach that we haven't increased our rates for so long. We need to make sure it takes place. We don't want any legal ambiguity. So we went with the most fair approach, we believe, is that if you apply a uniform rate structure to everybody, that means the cost that the city, again, we have to do a cost of service analysis. So the cost to the city to provide that 1 gallon of water to you or anybody else in the city is the same, regardless of how much water you use. And so if I want to make this example, it's like you pull into a gas station to buy gas. It wouldn't be fair for that gas station to charge you um, $1 per gallon up to 5 gallons, and then for that 6th gallon, he's going to charge you $10 per gallon. That's just doesn't seem to be fair, right? And so that's the approach that we took: is every gallon of water, it costs us the same amount to produce, whether it's 1 gallon or 10 gallons. Um, we have a full cost to be able to secure roughly 20 million gallons per day for anybody, and that's the cost that's shared evenly with everybody. So that's kind of the approach we took. If we were to try to come up with a tiered system, we would have to build into our cost of service analysis what that incremental increase would be. And that means there's going to need to be additional staffing, additional equipment, additional monitoring, and those would just be costs that would eventually be passed on to the customers, you guys, without a whole lot of benefit. So it doesn't actually generate new water. It would just add more costs to providing that water.
Thank you for that, Sunporn. I think we can go ahead and continue into the Prop 218 slides. And through that, we can touch on the question around the public's opportunity to vote on the proposed increases.
Okay. We'll go ahead and get into the Prop 218 process. So what is the Prop 218 process? The Prop 218 process is not a vote process. It is a protest process. So what does that mean? That means we have to do a public hearing, and we have to count actual written notices that are sent in to the city. So we need to make sure we notify everyone in our system that we are moving forward with a Prop 218 protest process. We have the hearing scheduled. We need to mail it to tenants and owners of record. And then there's a 45-day commenting period. So the public can show up in person, but we do need an actual written signed protest to show that you are to show that you are against the actual rate increase. So City Council is going to consider this on March 18th of next month. It is a majority protest, so we would need to make sure we receive a majority protest from residents, and that number is 14,899. So if we get 14,899 residents that submit protests not wanting the rates to be increased, then we cannot impose the increases. If we get less than that number, then City Council can vote on the increase during the March 18th City Council meeting. If it's adopted, the rates will be effective May 15th, 2025. Inside the actual Prop 218 notice that was sent out, there is 2 different types of written responses that that consumers and customers can submit. One is an objection. So an objection should, one, include a statement that this is an objection. So I object to the water rate increase, name, address, original signature. Specific section of law that is being violated, because an objection is actually a legal term. So you object because you see that there's something that the city is doing that is unlawful. And then you need to detail the explanation of your objection. Your objections do not count towards the majority protest requirement. Most people, even when they think they object, they really mean protest. So the protest requirement is that you need to state that it's a protest. So I protest the water rate increase. You need to provide your name, address, and we do need an original signature. And you might ask, well, why do you want an original signature? Why can't I just send this in as an email? Well, how would the city know that you as a property owner is actually sending this in? Someone can send an email out without being the property owner or even the resident at the property. So that's why we need the actual original signature as additional proof that it was a real live person and not just something generated through Google AI. Your protest does count towards the majority protest requirement of 14,899. So again, just a reminder, the public hearing is scheduled for Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. That is at 6 p.m. during the City of Manteca City Council meeting. City of Manteca staff with the consultants will be there to present information to City Council. City Council will hear public comments. The protest counts will be tallied at that meeting. So what is the difference between Proposition 218 and Measure Q? Proposition 218 is a state law that requires cities to follow a specific process, including notification requirements to the public and then holding a public hearing before we can increase rates, such as water and sewer rates. Measure Q is a local sales tax that needs to go to the voters for approval. It did go to voters and it was approved back in November 2024. It temporarily increases the sales tax by 0.75% to help fund street and traffic improvements, public safety, parks, public facilities. So those are two different things. Again, water and sewer being enterprise funds, they need to be self-sustaining. We cannot have a water or sewer system dependent on sales tax measure. So this is just a reminder. We are looking to have a conversation. If there's any questions that's not covered here and you want to show up to the future community meetings, we do have one coming up next week, Wednesday, February 26th at 2 p.m. at the Transit Center. We also have another one at night for Wednesday, March 5th at 6 p.m. again at the Transit Center. And then the public hearing is scheduled for Tuesday, March 18th, 6 p.m. I do want to take this opportunity to kind of address some of the comments I've seen on Facebook. Why at 2 p.m.? As a public agency, we do want to make sure that all the decisions and discussions that we have are happening in broad daylight. We're not looking to make decisions in the middle of the night. So 2 p.m. was kind of selected as a nice midpoint. We didn't want to have something in the morning and have people need to take the full day off to come and meet with us. But we didn't want to have it too late in the afternoon where folks would get to the end of the workday and not want to show up. So that was the reason why we selected the 2 p.m. Customer resources. So if you want more information, and please visit the website at mantecawastewater.org and mantecawaterrates.org. You can also go to the manteca.gov/departments under engineering and take a look at all of the documents under the engineering section. If there's any questions, feel free to give me a call. There's my phone number and my email. You can also follow us at City of Manteca on Instagram and Facebook for the latest updates. We'll go ahead and take a pause for questions. So as we don't see any new questions, I just wanted to again restate that for more information, please visit mantegawastewater.org or mantegawaterrates.org. You can also find additional information at manteca.gov/department/engineering. You can also contact me at 209-456-8460. That is my direct line. And my email at sboonslat@manteca.gov. You can also follow the city at City of Manteca on Instagram and Facebook for the latest updates. Thank you.